Does your shoulder feel unstable and you feel clicking or like a clunk in your shoulder? You might have a labrum injury. Do you need to have surgery for that injury? Well, we're going to talk about it in this video. My name is Dr. Marco Lopez, Doctor of Physical Therapy and Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist and co-founder of the Basketball Doctors. In today's video, we're going to go over why you may or may not need surgery for your torn labrum in your shoulder. Let's break down what the shoulder labrum is. So the labrum, let's think about it just anatomy wise. So your shoulder is a ball and socket joint. That's why your shoulder moves so much. It goes through different directions. You can go external, internal rotation, adduction, abduction, flexion, extension. So all these motions, and with this, the shoulder is technically in that area where there's a lot of mobility. And because I usually give this reference, think about a golf ball and a golf tee. The golf ball is the ball, and then the socket is that golf tee. So what happens is you need to have that labrum there to provide that suction and that stability. If not, that shoulder is going to be too loose. So that's kind of what the labrum does. It provides that suction to it and provides that stability. If not, the shoulders are going to be too unstable and too wobbly just because the ball is just much bigger than the socket there. Now you guys know about the labrum, we're going to talk about the ways that you could potentially tear it. So there's two main ways to tear it. One is a traumatic way, and the second one is a non-traumatic. The traumatic one, it's usually a dislocation or a subluxation. So think about when you're playing basketball, you reach for your arm between the screen and the defender moves your arm one way, you move the other way, you have that subluxation there. Think Kevin Love when he was with the Cavaliers. The other one is landing with an outstretched arm. So let's say you fall or someone bumps you from a screen and you have your arm straight, and then that straight motion creates a jarring motion here in the shoulder, and that potentially injures the labrum. So that's the traumatic way. There's a traumatic event that happens and leads to that torn labrum there. The second one is the non-traumatic. It's just kind of wear and tear. And the way this happens is it's usually on the dominant arm, or an activity that you're using that arm in. So for basketball players, it's when they're passing too much or when they're shooting too much, just overhead motion or just relying so much on the shoulder that sometimes some people don't strengthen the rotator cuff muscles, the stability muscles in your shoulder. So you're relying too much on the passive structures. And what happens is over time, when you don't have the muscle strength in the rotator cuff or the stability of the scapula, we're using too much of the labrum, and it leads to some instability, some wear and tear, and leads to that tear down the line. And it's usually, you see that a lot with those, like I mentioned, baseball players, swimmers, or any overhead athletes. A lot of basketball players are getting that because they're shooting a lot or using that arm a lot. But that's the other way to potentially tear it. So traumatic and then also non-traumatic. Let's break down why you may and may not need surgery. So first, let's find out if you probably don't need to have surgery. So if you torn your labrum, you've had an MRI, and you probably had a traumatic or non-traumatic injury. The big things is we want to see if you need to have surgery or not. And one of the big things that you need to look at is, and usually doctors will ask you this, is have you had any reoccurrent dislocations? Usually when, let's say you had a traumatic injury, you dislocate your shoulder, sometimes you're prone to dislocate your shoulder again. So if you haven't had any multiple dislocations in the past year and your shoulder feels pretty stable, meaning it's not apprehensive, like you can move your shoulder and it doesn't feel like it's going to give out, so you're in pretty good position that you probably don't need to have surgery. You also want to see if you have, good pain management. Do you have very little to no pain? Also, do you have good strength and stability? And the good strength and stability is going to lead to that better proprioception and stability in the shoulder, so you probably won't feel as much apprehension. So the big things you want to look at is, I usually tell people is, has your shoulder dislocated more than once since you originally injured it? If it has, then we may have to look into option number 2. And option number 2 is you may need to have surgery. And the reasons why you may need to have surgery is because 1, your shoulder has been dislocating multiple times. Number 2 is that you feel apprehensive or very unstable in certain positions. If you raise your arm over your head or out here, it just feels like it's in a pop or dislocate. Number 3, you tried conservative treatment, you tried getting stronger, it just still hasn't gotten better. So those are all little signs that you may need to have surgery because you tried these other things and it still feels apprehensive or unstable. So if you tore your labrum and you're trying to figure out what to do next, this is what we recommend. Normally, most of the time, we have people do conservative treatment for at least 3 to 6 months. We usually tell people within those 3 to 6 months, if you still don't feel better and you still feel like your shoulder's gonna give out and you've had a dislocation, then potentially you need to have surgery. But most of the time, it will heal on its own with proper rehab and progressive plan. So during our rehab and progressive planning, we usually have our athletes work on rotator cuff strengthening. And the reason we do rotator cuff strengthening is because, remember the ball in the socket? The labrum provides that suctioning. When that labrum is injured, the suctioning is not at 100% or efficient. So we want to make sure the rotator cuff muscles, the ones that go around the shoulder, are really strong. The other thing is working on your scapular control, the muscles in the back, your shoulder blade muscles. We also want to work on your thoracic mobility, your upper back to move really well. We also want to get back your shoulder range of motion mobility. And we also want to just work on global strengthening of the upper body, like working on your core, deltoids, everything. And the big thing too with the strengthening, we want to do open chain movements where your shoulder is not weight bearing on the ground, meaning strengthening in different motions up here, but also when your arms are down on the ground. So open and closed chain. And the big thing with this, as we're moving, we progress to a little bit more plyometric power exercises, really get that stability in the shoulder. But we really want to go through this conservative treatment. And throughout this process, we want to ensure, is the instability improving? Do you feel more stable? Or if you felt several dislocations with just basic activities, then at that point we tell people, hey, you may need to have surgery. But most of the time with this conservative treatment, in those 3 to 6 months, a lot of the athletes get better. But the big things you want to look out for, like we mentioned before, are those reoccurring dislocations when you're doing your rehab. And number 2, increased pain, decreased function. But don't worry about, a lot of people mention the clicking. A lot of people will have the clicking as long as you're not having those reoccurring dislocations. Well, hopefully you guys learned a little bit about the labrum and why you may or may not need to have surgery. Biggest things is we recommend conservative treatment for 3 to 6 months. Do that. If it's not getting better, then you have to go into the conversations of potentially having surgery. But most of the time, conservative treatment the right way would do its due diligence with your shoulder. And in case you need any help with your rehab, send us a message. We work with people online and in person in Southern California. We also have a great online shoulder stability rehab program that walks you step by step, day by day through your rehab program. Great for people that need to regain some stability in their shoulder. If you like this video, hit the like button, share this with friends and family, subscribe to our channel. We are the Basketball Doctors. Let's ball for life.